To answer your question, I'm just going to address 2 points. The first is like, you saw me moving around, it's like there's like this sunbeam that's coming right through that thing, and it was like blinding me over here. But I get a 10 out of it, so it's good. The second about that was actually these people from Code Pink, which are a bunch of, well, yeah, they're weird people. But on top of that, you said I was very calm on how calm I was. To begin with, I mean, I feel very comfortable pushing back on the topic they were raising. But the other is, and I'll be frank with you, I was in a bad mood to begin with that day because I hadn't eaten it. So they caught me at a really bad time. So anyways, and on your question, so there's the good news. There's good news, bad news. Let's start with the bad news. The bad news is you're having a witness to sort of back and forth because if you put up a bill on funding for Israel to pass, it's tied up in this broader, the border, and the border is a significant issue. Yesterday we had the director of the FBI in front of the Intelligence Committee, and I asked him, because I kind of know the answer, but we have to be careful how we talk about it, but I said, there are facilitation networks. I asked him, are you concerned about any, these groups around the world that traffic people? They move people. They move people around the world. Of any of them that have links to terrorism like ISIS or Hezbollah? And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, there's one, I have to be careful what I say, he said, but there's one in particular that we're very concerned about who has facilitators who have links to ISIS. So if you have if ISIS owns a trafficking network, they probably use it to move people around and make money, but they'll also use it to move terrorists. And we know for a fact, as I speak to you here now, and I'll talk more about Iran in a second, they're trying to kill Americans in America. We've already had 2 indictments of people that are trying to hire assassins to kill Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and President Trump and others. Iran's trying to conduct assassinations inside the United States. For the life of me, I don't know how you can be sitting at any table anywhere in the world with these people negotiating anything when they're trying to assassinate people here in the country. So it's tied up in a back and forth about that. So that's the bad news. Here's the good news. Number one is I think it's going to happen. There's too much strong bipartisan support. It's just a question of the mechanism by which it happens. So like next week, the whole week is going to be like Groundhog Day for us. It's going to be the same as last week, right? The House is supposed to pass the second half of the appropriations bills on Wednesday. They'll send it to us on Thursday. We'll have to vote on it Thursday or Friday. And then after that passes, well, I think you'll see more focus on those 2 things, on the supplemental spending. The other piece of good news is that the funding, so we have to authorize the spending. And the spending's already been authorized. It's already authorized by law for 10 years. The memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Israel is codified. We codified it, I think, 2 years ago. It was a bill that I sponsored along with Senator Coons. So the administration continues to have the authority to transfer. And the way it's written, they can actually pull forward future years' authorizations to use now. The problem is, obviously, if you're borrowing from the future, these weapon needs are still going to be there down the road, so we're still going to have to do something eventually. But that's why it hasn't reached that sense of urgency yet. I will raise one more point, and that is that I think as part of this conversation now, we have to increasingly make sure that the aid or whatever we do with money is not conditioned in a way that sort of, like, you can't ask Israel, we support you to win this war, but you can't do the things it's going to take to win the war. The truth of the matter is the longer it takes for them to go into some of these places they need to go to achieve their strategic objectives, the more suffering there's going to be. The longer Hamas is allowed to be a functioning entity with the capability to conduct attacks, the more suffering there's going to be across the board. So why we're prolonging this is unnecessary, but in an effort to appease competing political interests in American politics, we're in this inconsistent position of, well, with Israel 100%, unless you do things that you need to do to win, and if you do those things, then we're going to limit the weaponry that we provide you and the resources. So the good news is I think something will happen. The good news is it's already codified, so we still have some time. The bad news is that we have to keep an eye on it as it hasn't happened yet, and we have to make sure that there's safeguards against it being conditioned in a way that I think undermine the goal we all have, which is for this to end quickly and with the defeat of Hamas as an entity that can do what it did on 7th of October. I also think it's important to sort of figure out, I think it's a mistake. It's a mistake a lot of people are making to view this thing as just the latest chapter in an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is much broader than that. At the source of all of this is one simple driver, and that is Iran wants to spread their Shia Islamic revolution throughout the region. And you can see how they're trying to achieve it objectively. The 2 things standing in their way. There are 2 things standing in the way of Iran achieving their regional dominance. The first is Israel, because they can't defeat Israel in a war. frontal war. And the second is the presence of the United States in the region. And so their goal, if the Iranians were here now and they were to share with us their strategy, what they would say is, I doubt they would be here, probably wouldn't have a great welcome, but if they came here to Washington and they shared their objectives with us, their objective is, let's use these militia groups that we sponsor. They call them proxies, they really are just agents of the Iranians. In Syria, in Iraq, now in Yemen, in the West Bank, in Gaza, across the region. Let's use these groups to attack Israel, but attack America. And what they hope is that America will say, okay, the Middle East is too problematic, we need to get out of there. We need to remove ourselves from Jordan, we need to remove ourselves from Iraq, from Syria, small troop presence, we need to get out of there. Once we are gone, then the Iranians can now use Syria and Iraq to target Jordan. And they will go in and take Jordan. And once they take Jordan and undermine Jordan, then their goal is to make Israel an unlivable place. Their goal is not to defeat the Israeli military frontally. It is to basically make Israel a place you just can't live. Because you're constantly being attacked from all sides by multiple different groups, all who have some different causes, but all united by the goal of the destruction of the Jewish state, to make Israel an unlivable place. With an economy that doesn't function, with a government that has no revenue because its economy doesn't function, a place that people no longer want to visit or can no longer live there because life is, that's what their goal is. And once that happens, then they will achieve the strategic objective that unites all of them. That is to have a zone from the river to the sea with no Jews. Drive every Jew out from the river to the sea, as they like to say. That's what their goal is. And they won't stop there. They want Bahrain, they want the UAE, they want the other Gulf kingdoms. So now they make Israel unlivable and it collapses. They drive America out, they take Lebanon, they take Syria, they take Iraq. And what I mean by take is maybe they're not the government of that place, but I mean they control whoever the government of that place is. Now they become a regional power. That is their goal. And that's what's behind all of this. Hamas does not exist. Hamas does not have the weapons. Hamas does not have the resources. They don't have the money to have millions of dollars to build these tunnels. Not these millions of dollars did not go to hospitals. Okay, did not go to farming, did not go to build an economy, did not go to schools. They spent millions and millions of dollars building a tunnel network. Where do they get all this money from? The answer is from Iran. Where do they get the advanced weaponry? Who's getting these weapons that they have now? This is a band of pirates, basically, who have advanced weaponry. And where do they have the overhead imagery and the geolocation technology to find where ships are and to attack them? You think about what they're doing to global shipping right now. The Chinese, by the way, they have great rates on their insurance because their ships aren't being attacked, but everybody else's ships are being attacked. And the price of goods all over the world is going to go up by a band of pirates who have somehow gotten access to one-way UAVs, guided missiles with long-range capabilities to threaten global shipping in the Red Sea, all of it provided by Iran. Hezbollah, agent of Iran. We talk about that. And Hamas is the same thing. And so October 7th is a horrifying day. But it's just one element of a much broader strategy. And we have to come to grips with that as policymakers up here. That the Iranian ambition goes far beyond simply supporting these groups of what they call the axis of resistance. It is to drive America out of the region, destroy the Jewish state, and become the dominant regional power. It's how they envision themselves. And we have to accept that that is at the core of everything that's happening. If there was not this radical Shia clerics in Tehran, none of these other problems would be at the level that they're at right now, and all of them would be much easier to face. And that is at the core of all of our challenges that we face in that part today. And so even as we provide assistance to Israel to ensure that they can continue to defend themselves and to defeat their enemies, we have to recognize that the broader problem here, the head of this snake, is in Tehran. It's in Tehran. And until that problem is confronted and we accept it for what it is, we can't truly begin to solve it. And there's extraordinary challenges in this regard because the Iranians have continued now to develop long-range missiles with capabilities now to reach Europe and all of the Middle East. And one day they'll be able to threaten America. I mean, if they continue to move on the pace they are right now, they will one day possess. And I don't mean one day 20 years from now. I mean one day perhaps before the end of this decade, possess intercontinental ballistic missiles with the capability of reaching the continental United States. And now they become immune to pressure. Now they can do anything they want because in the end they can threaten you with a nuclear strike. So these are very, very tenuous times and one in which we need to continue to be clear and firm on. And it goes back to the point that I've made from the beginning. We can go into all the details that are, everybody has their own opinions on here about different aspects that keep coming up, but this notion, if we live in a perfect world and all of this, we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live in a utopia. We live in reality. And no matter how much the administration or others like to talk about things like two-state solutions, you have to ask yourself, well, who would run that second state? And right now, the only choices are groups that want the destruction of the Jewish state. That's a pretty tough thing to ask people to agree to. And that is when you turn over sovereignty and land to people who will use it, as they've always used land that they've acquired, to launch attacks against you and try to kill your civilians. So, you know, it's a tough time, and it's one that requires some seriousness in how we approach this. It really isn't one that can become politicized. I do want to share one more thing, because it's in the vein of everything we've discussed, and it is troubling to me. And this is a point I used to make for a long time, and I made it for different reasons. And what I used to say is, the support that Israel enjoys in Congress today is the product of 20 or 30 years of work. So what you see here now is basically 20 or 30 years of work and advocacy and awareness and understanding of it, and you see strong bipartisan support, and that I hope will continue. But what is public policy in America going to look like 20 years from now? Well, what it will look like 20 years from now, I used to say 20 years, maybe I should say 10 or even 5. If you want to know what public policy in America is going to look like in 5 to 10 years, you need to go to a college campus. Because those people are going to graduate from there and they're going to run for office. And they're going to graduate from there and run businesses. And they're going to graduate from there and become staffers. We already have this problem. We already have members of the permanent bureaucracy who have signed on to letters, anonymously, by the way, because they're cowards. They don't have the guts to sign on the letter with their name on it. But basically, you know, writing letters about how we're supporting genocide and all these sorts of things. That's already embedding itself. But these people will continue to climb. Eventually, one of them will probably be nominated to be a Secretary of State or a Secretary of Defense, and we won't even know they signed the letter because they signed it anonymously. So I do think there's a real concern that I have 5 to 10 years from now, maybe less. Because if you want to know what the future of American public policy looks like, it's graduating from our schools right now, and not just any schools, but the most elite schools in the country, the ones that are supposed to be producing our future leaders, which makes you wonder whether we maybe need to pick some different schools to be our elite schools. But it also makes you understand the challenge before us. You know, at the State of the Union tonight, the president was about 15 minutes late. And one of the reasons why 15 minutes late is because a bunch of protesters, Hamas supporters, tried to block the motorcade. Now, you know, I told people there's no excuse for being late. He has a helicopter. You know, you can just fly here, but he chose to drive through that. But it's just another example. Yesterday we had a bunch of disruptions in the intelligence community. Not a week goes by that we don't have people in the hallways. And look, people can express themselves any way they want. The one that really burns me, this is a pet peeve, but I think it's an important pet peeve. The one that really burns me is people that are in this country on student visas. Yes. Okay, you're here as a student visa or whatever visa, and you're a supporter of Hamas. If you showed up somewhere and asked for a visa to come to the United States and they asked you, do you support Hamas? Yes, I'm very supportive of Hamas. They probably wouldn't give you the visa, I hope. But somehow you're already here, now you get to stay. And I've asked repeatedly, why aren't we deporting people? Like they're hoping And I'm all for free speech and I'm all for freedom of expression, but these aren't Americans. These are visitors to our country, and who are, you know, organizing these things in the street to confuse and harass. It is sad to hear so many of my friends whose kids have begun to hide their Jewish identity. Because of fear of what life is like on some of these campuses. I think we've been blessed in Florida. The University of Florida, my alma mater, is. I like all the other schools too, guys. I'm just mentioning that one because my friend is now the president there, Ben Sass. My son attends there. It has the largest population of Jewish students of any school in the country, and they've been fantastic at supporting them and supporting everyone. But in a lot of other communities, it's not the case. And we'll hear more about it now with spring break as young people come back home and tell their parents. That's why I'm starting to hear these stories. And it's just really heartbreaking. I never, frankly, thought I'd ever live to see the day where that is the case in the United States, but that's what we're facing. And that's relevant, not just because it's annoying and dangerous, because that's what our politics is going to look like in 10 or 15 years. If we don't continue to step up our efforts, not simply to advocate, but to educate the realities of everything that's happening in the region, from Iran down to the history behind some of this. So, you know, one that on social media, like for a while, these videos were going on about colonizers and ridiculous things of this nature. they're getting this from somewhere, right? Somebody is embedding these thought processes in the minds of people that are gonna end up making important decisions in this country. So, in any event, I think other than that, it's going well. But these are the challenges we face, and you can always count on us, because I believe this is stuff I deeply believe. I think it's in the national interest of our country, and it's also the right place to be as a people and as a nation. So continue to count on me on all of that.